Dr. Chia.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise in support of the bill, which I believe to be necessary for the welfare of all Singaporeans. I would like to speak on the importance of this new act from the perspective of healthcare, and specifically from the viewpoint of the pernicious and harmful effects of deliberate online falsehoods and malicious misrepresentations in regard to medical and health information. And I hope that this also illustrates why I feel that the approach that this bill takes is indeed the right approach to protect us all from online falsehoods. Now, it was not too long ago that healthcare professionals and ordinary citizens alike hailed the internet as a great equalizer by helping to reduce information asymmetry between healthcare providers and their patients. While many doctors were initially apprehensive when their patients became so much better informed due to the amount of medical information available online, healthcare professionals gradually learned to welcome this and appreciate how this made the doctor-patient relationship more equal and more participative. But it soon became apparent that the internet, like any powerful tool, can be a double-edged sword. Medical misinformation and outright falsehoods began gaining a larger and larger footprint in the data sphere. And it was exasperating to many healthcare providers that such falsehoods online were significantly impacting the health-seeking behavior and ultimately the health of their patients, so much so that life and limb were at risk. In an op-ed piece earlier this year by Dr. Haider Warek with the byline, "Fake news threatens our democracy, but fake medical news threatens our lives," he notes that, and I quote, "While misinformation has been the object of great attention in politics, medical misinformation might have an even greater body count. As is true with fake news in general, medical lies tend to spread further than truths on the internet, and they have very real repercussions." Mr. Deputy Speaker, in Mandarin, please. 我相信议员们都知道很多网上虚假健康新闻，导致非常真实伤害的例子。降低胆固醇的4大0 statins 类的这些药物的虚假信息，导致许多人选择不服用这些药品，从而显著地增加心脏病发作的风险。癌症治疗的虚假声明，导致许多人放弃了可治愈肿瘤病的救生治疗，转而采用无效治疗，甚至可能是危险的治疗方法。网上还有很多关于各类疫苗危害的虚假信息。最近几个月，一些居民向我提出了他们对疫苗接种计划安全性的担忧。我们一直倡导这些计划是出于健康的原因。一些人表示，相信疫苗接种可能会导致严重的精神或神经上的损伤。其他人则相信许多疫苗都含有毒药。当被问及这些信息的来源时，他们都表示是从互联网上阅读的文章，或者是通过 WhatsApp 或 SMS 传播的信息。这并不令人惊讶，因为这些不实之词不能通过印刷刊物或者其他实体媒体的传播，因为这些管道都有关于颁布类虚假信的规定。The consequences of fake medical news are clear to see. It is startling that we are now seeing measles epidemics around the world with very real loss of life that could have been entirely preventable through vaccination. Vaccination that increasing numbers are choosing to refuse, partly due to untrue information available online. Closer to home, the timely decision by the Ministry of Health to introduce anti-HPV vaccination for female school children, which will save the lives of many of our future wives and mothers, has been greeted with the rise of online falsehoods regarding the vaccine, which seek to derail this very important and life-preserving program. Online falsehoods have very real consequences. Misleading information spread by the anti-vaccine movement using social media can cause parents to reconsider vaccinating their children, exposing them to significant health risks. Professor Heidi Larson, who is a public health expert at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, wrote in the journal Nature that the next major outbreak of a fatal strain of influenza or something else will not be due to a lack of preventive technologies. Instead, emotional contagion, digitally enabled, could erode trust in vaccines so much as to render them moot. This deluge of conflicting and manipulated information on social media should be recognized as a global public health threat. Like other members before me, I do not think that this act will be an impediment to free speech, nor should it have any chilling effect on public discourse or creativity. I believe it will actually accomplish the opposite. The problem we have now is that on the online arena, those that shout the loudest, trumpet that which is sensationalist, novel or frightening, regardless of its veracity, will garner the most attention and drown out other voices, leading to an imbalance which actually prevents equitable and meaningful discussion. A lie is a lie, no matter how much you may wish it to be true, and no matter how you paint it. And the distinction between truth and falsehood is simple where it counts, in matters of life and death, and of sickness and health. Particularly in issues of healthcare, there's really no need for committee after committee, council after council, or for the courts to decide what is true and what is not. Now, this yardstick does not apply to truth in advertising or standards in claims about medical treatments offline. So why should offline or online untruths be spared? And therefore, I feel that the same should apply to online information and also misinformation about healthcare. And make no mistake about it, much of this information online are deliberate and carefully crafted and cultivated. And this new disease on the online space, as the member Ms. Sun Xueling has so eloquently put in a speech yesterday, needs a targeted yet calibrated response with legislation such as the one we are debating today. Or these bad actors of the social media space will gain the upper hand to the detriment of us all. It is, of course, important that we continue to invest in public education, but the general public cannot be always relied on to tell what is fake news and what is not. In fact, in a recent study by MIT, it showed that people are 70% more likely to share online falsehoods rather than facts. Laws still need to be in place to safeguard the public interest and for public safety. Hence, I agree that domain ministers are best placed to decide if the falsehood concerning their area impacts public interest, as the correction of online medical falsehoods, for example, constitutes a public health urgency and demands to be expedited. And speed here is indeed necessary. Now, if there's a physical threat to public security or public health, an executive decision needs to be made as to how to counter this threat, and certainly decision by committee or by prior application to the courts certainly would not work. Imminent or existing threats, either physical or in the online space, must be dealt with expediently, though I do agree that for the falsehoods, there should still be an appeals process and the court should have the final say on what is false. Here I do seek a clarification from the Minister as to the process through which an online falsehood will be dealt with in terms of the action or the corrective action taking. How will it be decided if a simple corrective rebuttal is all that will be required, or if a takedown is needed? Now, this is because, like most situations in healthcare, prevention is always better than cure. Once a medical lie has entered the public domain, it takes root very quickly and becomes very hard to eradicate, if not impossible. Posting the real facts alongside the falsehood will probably be of little use. It is so much more powerful and engaging to read a snippet of alarmist fake medical news and believe it to be true due to the strong human element than to believe the reams of boring but rigorous scientific and medical evidence that can be posted alongside it. For example, there is news circulating online about how a promising young person was reduced to a cripple some weeks after receiving a vaccine, and how the vaccine was responsible for a horrific condition. Now imagine if we were just to post alongside this untrue article the links to the many scientific papers showing it to be untrue. I wonder how many would think otherwise or have their opinions changed as a result of this corrective posting. And for example, in an epidemic such as perhaps way back during the SARS epidemic, for instance, what if there was fake news online that going to a quarantine area or to a hospital would lead to loss of life, or maybe things like eating white salt would be able to cure you of SARS? If this was allowed to spread unchecked on the internet, how many lives would have been lost? I'm just going to end by just making a little bit of a small comment. I actually have a contrarian view that perhaps this law may in fact be a little bit too narrow. In fact, it's very far from the nuclear option that the member, Mr. Peng, just spoke about. And from the perspective of an academic, of which I think in some areas of my job roles I do consider myself as an academic, I think it's always been the case that when we do research or publish papers about various aspects of science or research, these are really subject to many rules and regulations. And the veracity of such publications, if there are erroneous conclusions or problems with the data, this is subject to very real scrutiny, and there is already a due process for corrections or even retractions. However, such avenues do not exist if such papers are published online, which is one of the criticisms for the emerging breadth of research or so-called research articles that are sprouting online. Hence, for example, if I were to publish some data which was rejected by all of the highly regarded and respected medical journals and decided to take it in my own hands and publish it online, and many people could read it, there's actually very little recourse for the scientific community or for various agencies to be able to correct such falsehood. So in closing, I would like to end by expressing my thanks to the Select Committee on Deliberate Online Falsehoods for their work and for the contributions towards the formulation of this Act, and I support the bill. Thank you.